Welcome to Firsts in Fiction, your first stop for learning to write fantastic fiction. I'm your host, Aaron Gansky, author of The Bargain, The Hand of Adonai series, and Firsts in Fiction.
I'm Molly Jo Riley. I am author of The Unemployment Cookbook, the upcoming Location Mystery NOLA, and producer of the podcast.
And I'm Alton Gansky, still coming to you from Central California, and I'm the author of several novels and nonfiction books, and we have a special guest with us today who I'll introduce at length in a little bit, but we have with us a very well-known agent, and by way of disclosure, my agent, at least he was when we started, my agent. Hopefully he'll still be at the end of this, Chip McGregor from McGregor Literary, and he'll be answering some questions for us about the business of agents.
Thanks for being on, Chip. Really appreciate having you here.
You bet. Nice to be here.
Yeah. I was going to answer all the questions myself, but Pops thought it might be a good idea to bring somebody on who knew what they were talking about. So.
Well, that would make it easier for me.
Yeah, indeed. So. We do want to remind those of you listening to the audio-only podcast that you can watch us live Tuesdays in the PM at 6:30 Pacific Standard Time, 9:30 for you East Coasters. If you are interested in getting notifications about when we record, you can add us to your Google Circles, firstsinfictionpodcast@gmail.com. You can also, if you are watching via the YouTube feed, do us a favor, click the thumbs up button if you would. That really helps us out, and maybe share it with some friends on your Facebook or something like that. It'd be really awesome. And while you're on your Facebook or your Twitter, don't forget to ask the author. We've got a staple of questions here, and we'd like to answer yours. And so if you send those to us either through Facebook, email, or Twitter, we'll add that to a list, and we will get to it before too much longer. So don't forget to do that. Tonight's Ask the Author question comes from the esteemed Sheila Friedley, who I used to work with back in my Serrano High School days. She was a librarian there. She's done a lot of good work there, and she's just the kindest heart that you might ever meet. Just a really good human being. So glad to get a question from her. And she asks tonight, do you ever get writer's block? She puts writer's blocks in quotation marks. I love that. And she says, if so, what do you do? Now, some time ago, a few weeks back, we did answer a very similar question. Might have been the same type of question, but it's been a couple of weeks, so I thought we would kind of rehash some of the answers that we gave. And we're going to go quickly, even though it's a very complicated question. That being said, yes, I do get writer's block. I think discovery writers are more prone to writer's block than are those who outline. I feel like if you're an outliner, you get writer's block while you're outlining, and then maybe not so much on the back end. But if you're a discovery writer with no outline to work from, you tend to find the writer's block hits somewhere around a third of the way through the book, maybe halfway through the book. And so, yeah, I face it quite often. And there's really two ways to handle it in my book. And the first is to push through it, just to keep writing. Understanding that I'm going to be writing some garbage that's not going to be publishable. That will all come out later. But it's going to take that push to get myself back into the project, get my mind back where it needs to be, to sink back into the voice that I've established for the project, and that's going to eventually pay off in the long run. Now, there are days where my writer's block is simply just the fact that my brain has ceased to work and it is turned into a big pile of mush. And on those days, I tend not to do writing because it's mentally and physically exhausting. And so then I might watch YouTube for a minute, or watch a mindless show, or just hang out and play with the kids, or whatever the case may be. But I'm going to do something to kind of get my mind off the project so that my mind can eventually get back into the project. I find when I spend too long away from a project, or spend any time away from a project, eventually my mind goes back to it. It doesn't stay gone very long. And so sometimes I just need that break. Sometimes I just need to decompress, recharge the batteries, and then take a running start at the project. How about you, Pops?
Well, I'm tempted to say no, that I've never had writer's block because I'm just the perfect writer, but truth wins out again.
We would never doubt you for saying something like that.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I think all creatives have some form of block or another. For some reason, writers get a name to theirs called writer's block. I've never heard of a photographer's block, or an interior designer's block, or a sculptor's block. or anything like that. But I think most creatives, at some point or another, will have a block in their creative thinking. Not unusual. Creative work is difficult, and every once in a while it just kind of bogs down. The way I deal with it is, if possible, I skip ahead. If I can't figure out the next scene or something's not working, I leave it and I move on to the next one. And in the process of writing the next scene, or even 3 or 4 scenes further down, even in the process of doing that, the answer I'm looking for will come up, and then I can go back and fill it in. When they shoot movies, they don't do them chronologically. They shoot all the scenes they're going to do at one location, then they reposition to the new location, they do them there, and then they edit them together. That's okay for writers to do too. If you get stuck on something, skip it, move on to the next thing, and then you may find that the answer will just come to you. Your brain continues to work on the problem. It'll let you know, or as Stephen King says, the boys in the basement will come out, do the heavy lifting for you. But the key is to keep going. The thing to watch out for, and I'm labeling this one Al's axiom number 21, fear the paralysis of analysis. Sometimes we get so caught up in trying to make things perfect we can't move ahead. We're the centipede who can't remember which foot to move first. With that, Tolkien suffered from that. In fact, probably the only reason he was ever published was C.S. Lewis gave him a pretty hard time about just finish and send it in. And that's how we ended up with his great work. So it can happen to anyone. What about you, Molly?
I'm typing Al's axiom into the chat room. Okay. Yes, I do get writer's block. I get it often, and like Aaron and Al, I just try to push through it. Most of the time, I will shift the focus of my work. I will either try to read back the recent chapters or even earlier chapters to remind myself where I want the story to go and how to take it. Sometimes I'll try to take the scene that I'm blocked with and write it from a different character's perspective. So how would this character react? What do they see the main character doing or not doing? If it's really a place where I can't seem to write, then if I'm at home, I'll clean house or cook, because that gives me a satisfaction in doing those things, but at the same time my mind is still working in the background and keeping those characters and the storyline going. About once a week I get away from it all. I intentionally try to take that break and go out, play, I don't know, maybe play magic at a friend's house, catch a movie, grab coffee, anything that keeps me still in the creative frame of mind, but also not feeling trapped. It helps me to still connect with my muse. And if it's really late at night and I can't do any of those things because I'll fall asleep and burn the house down if I leave a loaf of bread in the oven, then I'm just going to go to bed early, and I will actually talk out loud to my characters while I'm falling asleep, and I'll ask them to explain to me what it is they want done. And a lot of times just doing that when I wake up, the problem's solved. I'm not crazy. I am just a creative person.
I tried that once, Molly, and my characters told me to shut up. So,
yeah, shut up.
Yeah, but that's you. They love me.
I guess that's the difference. I'm reminded what Isaac Asimov used to do. He kept 3 projects going all the time, and anytime he got a block on one of them, he just rotated his chair to the next Selectric number 2 typewriter that he had, and started working on that piece of work until he bogged down on that. And he just rotated to the 3rd one. And
it's interesting. I had a writing mentor whose advice to me was, anytime you get writer's block, you're stuck. The issue is you generally know what's going to happen, whether you're an outliner or you're a seat of the pants writer. The fact is you generally know what it is that where you want the story to go. You just don't know how to get there. And so the advice I got was read the last page or so out loud, push away from the computer or push away from whatever it is you're writing on, and start telling it. If there were somebody in the room, what would you do? And start telling the story, and oftentimes that will help you figure out, oh, that's what I would say next. That's right, because that's what's going to happen next in the story, and then you're right back at it. The other tip that I'd have for people is, oftentimes, I don't know if it's really writer's block, but it's hesitation. Oftentimes at the start of the day, people are like, yeah, I don't know I don't know how to get started. I feel blocked at the, I'm trying to just that initial, I've checked the emails, I've checked the sports scores, I've seen, what's on CNN, I've watched all the cute puppy videos. Dang, what do I do now? A tip which, I learned years ago in an interview with, that I read with Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway said, he always ended his day in the middle of a sentence, so that when he came in the morning, he didn't have to start fresh. He wasn't starting with a new page. He wasn't starting with a new paragraph. He would read out loud the last few things that he'd written, and then all he had to do to get started was to finish the sentence. And that would get him into it and get him going, and he'd be off and running. So a couple of tips from the agent.
Who, by the way, is an author also, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But
Some very good advice there. I'd heard the one about ending in a sentence. I've done that myself several times, especially when I feel writer's block coming on, or I know that I'm going to have very limited time the following day. I'll definitely end in the middle of a sentence. But I had not heard the part about reading out loud and then talking it out as if somebody was listening. A lot of times I solve my writer's block simply by talking to my wife while we're cooking dinner. And she is a saint, and so she'll just nod and say, uh-huh, 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 and she's not listening to a single word, but just the fact of talking out loud genuinely helps me out. So I hadn't considered that, but that's definitely some great advice. So there you go, how to beat writer's block in 3 easy steps. And now let's turn our attention. I want to give as much time as possible to our guest tonight, because he's got, I'm sure, a lot more pearls of wisdom for us. So, Pops, why don't you introduce Dr. Chip McGregor for us?
I'll do it. As I've mentioned earlier, Chip is a friend, and he is my agent, and I love working with the guy. Dr. Chip McGregor, he usually won't let you call him doctor, but Dr. Chip McGregor is the founder of McGregor Literary Agency, and he's represented authors that have appeared on the New York Times bestsellers list. They have won are in final with the Christie Awards, Gold Medallion Awards, Romantic Times, Reader's Choice, Rita Awards, and then the very much coveted starred reviews in Publishers Weekly. If that's new to anyone, Publishers Weekly is a trade journal for publishing. They review books, and the one thing you want to do when your book is reviewed is see a star on it, because it means that you may have a future. And not a lot of them are given out. So. Chip is also a man of letters. He's earned a Bachelor of Science degree with high honors from Portland State University, a Master of Arts with honors from Biola University. And you probably know what Biola stands for, don't you, Chip?
I do.
All right.
Bible Institute of Los Angeles.
I have a funny story with that. I was writing a term paper in college, and for some reason I footnoted Baptist Institute of Los Angeles, and the professor circled it, sent it back, and said, "You wish." And I'm thinking, probably a mistake on my part. Yeah, it's Bible Institute of Los Angeles, and a PhD in Policy and Management from the University of Oregon, and did postdoc work in Oxford. So quite an education there, and he utilizes it all, I think, for his clients. But I also want people to understand, and this is one of the reasons I admire Chip so much, is he's not only an agent, but he's a writer. He has done the work, and in dealing with agents, and I'm not speaking bad about any agents, the ones that I have found most meaningful and understanding are those who have put words on a page, not just read words on a page. And so run over to Amazon or wherever you like to get your books, and look up Chip McGregor, and you'll see some of his books. He has a couple of craft books out that are such as step-by-step pitches and proposals and how I can find a literary agent. Very, very useful stuff. So they're there. And for those on the audio side only, it's Mac Gregor. That's the M-A-C, Gregor, one word. So I'm proud to say that Chip is my agent and my friend. Chip, thanks for putting up with all of this stuff from us.
You bet. It's really nice to be here, Al, and good to see you again. Clearly, you've lost weight.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Actually, that's just me. It's in the video, so a little confusion there. But Yeah, super glad to have you on. I have fond memories of meeting you up at Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers Conference, and you talked with me. I'm not sure if you remember this or not, but you took some time out of your day to look at a project that I was working on, which eventually became The Bargain, and you gave me some really good advice on the first few pages, and that became very instrumental in shaping the course that the book took. So in a large way, the publication of The Bargain is thanks to you, even though you didn't represent me, but you gave me some quality advice to a new fledgling writer, and I remember that, and I appreciate that. So I'm going to try not to fanboy out too much, but
Yeah.
I'm super glad that you're on the show. So so we can be all on the same page here. Let's just go ahead and begin real quick. What exactly does an agent do?
Okay. Well, first of all, let me clear up one misconception that there is one author-agent relationship. Just so we're clear, I mean, you look at Al here, and Al has a certain style, likes things a certain way, works on certain kinds of projects and everything, and because of gifting, because of personality, because of projects, the things that Al and I do together, the relationship we have, the kind of things that I'm doing with him, may be different from what I'm doing with Jim Krause, or with Rachel Hauck, or with Mindy Stearns-Clark, or with Leslie Gould. So in other words, just so you understand, I mean, it's different. Recently, I was talking to, there's an author who has done really well, and currently on the New York Times list, as a matter of fact, New York Times bestseller list, as we're taping this. And she called and wanted to basically talk about book ideas, and so we spent time on the phone talking about book ideas. Well, and that was it. I mean, in that instance, that's all we do. Well, there are some people who really, they're writers who want to talk about book ideas. Al, you and I have really not spent that much time talking about book ideas. There have been a couple of times. I remember one good evening we sat there at a conference together at Blue Ridge and kind of talked through some military thriller ideas, But there are some people, I represent some people, they don't really care what I have to say about their idea, So just so we're clear, I mean, there's going to be different things with different people, and so there's no one relationship or one right relationship. But generally speaking, I'm looking for people who can tell a really good story. And so, I always say to people, if you can picture a Venn diagram as, overlapping circles, which is great to do here when you're on a video camera. That's clear. You're always looking for a big idea, a really good story idea, presented through great writing, great craft. And then, ultimately you'd love that from a third circle that is from somebody who has a great platform and can help market and sell the book. Now, ideally, it's those three things don't always come into perfect alignment. So you've got this, sometimes you've got a great story idea, just okay craft. Sometimes you've got great story idea, really good craft, not much of a platform. So in other words, all those things kind of interact. But part of my job, certainly, is to figure out what's a great story. Another part is to figure out what's saleable. Sometimes an author has a story that needs to be tweaked. Sometimes they have really good writing, but the story's not there. Sometimes they'll have, they need editorial help. We're not an editorial service, but we can talk through the story, or I can introduce them to an editor, or we can just read it and make comments and everything. Oftentimes, it's the platform or the marketing piece. If I wanted to, you know this, I mean, I could spend my entire life just doing marketing consulting. I don't, because that doesn't pay any bills for me. But the fact is, I mean, that's part of what I do. However, the part that most people know about is, well, Chip, who used to be a publisher at Time Warner and has been doing this agenting job for almost 20 years now, he knows people, and so he can help me, take my proposal, polish it, get it all ready, get my manuscript ready, and then he knows where to take it, and those people know him. So instead of just sending it in cold, I'm going to research to make sure that it goes to the appropriate houses. I'm going to call them, talk with them, and everything, make sure it's a fit. Then I'm going to show it to them. Then and maybe we're going to do that just at a couple of houses. Maybe we're going to do that at multiple houses. Try and place the project. Then once we have a publisher that's interested in it, or maybe several publishers interested in it, we're going to negotiate a deal and try and I advocate for the author. The thing that I always say to people is that if you're an author and you're facing a big publisher, you're facing Random House, or you're facing HarperCollins or Simon & Schuster or Macmillan. They have teams of accountants and contract specialists and lawyers on their side. So who do you have on your side? See, that's the thing. I mean, if you're sitting down at a table with attorneys and contract specialists and accountants and everything, do you know what you're doing? And can you negotiate a deal? Do you even know what to look for, what to read through? The fact is, my job has changed a lot in that I spend a lot more time marketing than I used to and less time on idea development. I always say to people, the most important thing I do is career management, because different authors are in different places. And Al, you know this. I mean, you've seen your career change from being in one role and then doing another role where you're writing full-time, and then doing another role where you're kind of doing sort of a bunch of different creative things. Sometimes authors go through seasons, and I suppose every author has the dream of being a full-time writer. But not everybody does, and some people, once they get there, they realize, wait, this isn't what I want to do, or they, we've done a lot of celebrities over the years. We've worked with a lot of celebrities. How does this writing piece fit with the other things I'm doing, with the TV shows I'm doing, or with the movies I'm doing, or with the music that I'm doing, or with the speaking that I'm doing, And so a lot of it's career management as well. So, finding talent, helping them get things ready, shopping it, trying to find partnerships with that, negotiating the contract, ensuring contract compliance, especially helping the author with the marketing piece and everything, and then doing career management. Those are all pieces that I do in my job.
You sound like a very busy man. So. I think there might be some misconceptions out there, because especially from new writers who expect agents to do one thing, A, B, or C, but that's not always the way agents work. Have you kind of run into that representing authors, if they have
sure.
Any strange requests or things that they assume that you're going to do that you don't do?
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why I will encourage any writer who's watching this. I know how competitive it is right now. People want to be published, and so they tend to sign up with the first agent that expresses interest in them. And I'm telling you, that may not be the best thing, because I always say to people, look, you don't need an agent. You need the right agent, which is true. I mean, you don't need a doctor. You need the right doctor. You don't need just an attorney. You need, if you're going through, if you're going through buying a home and there's some kind of difficulty, you need somebody who really understands real estate law. So we do publishing law. If you're looking at this, you need some sort of an attorney who's doing intellectual property rights law or publishing law. Okay, so I would argue that most authors, first of all, they need to know who they are and what they need. And sometimes it takes a while to figure that out. What do they need in an agent? And then who can provide that? Because not all agents, frankly, are created the same. And I think that's, if you have a lot of CBA novelists who are watching this, I think that's really true in CBA. I think that you have some people who are agents who are very experienced in the industry, and some who are not. You have some people who really understand writing and can help with the writing and editorial side. Maybe don't have as much experience selling. You have some people who are really contract agents, and they are great at contracts, but they cannot talk to you about career management, or they can't talk to you about the creative side. So, and none of us are perfect in all of those, so it's one of those. So yeah, to answer you, by the way, your question there, Aaron, you were asking, have I ever had weird things? Oh yeah. Oh, I have had people ask if I'd basically, was I going to take care of the financial stuff? So I once had somebody ask, would I pay their bills for them? And it's like, yeah, there's certain things, I'm not there to be your mom. I don't vacuum. I don't do windows.
I thought when we first started working together that Chip would come down from Oregon and wash my car every 2 weeks, but it turns out that's not part of the deal.
Yeah, I mean, I might, depending on what the percentage was, but.
Well done. Yeah.
What Chip has done for me in times is he's suggested ideas, and I remember my two most recent nonfiction books were not my original ideas. I started with Chip, who sold them to Baker Books, and then contacted me. And I don't know if I ever told you this.
Let's give a little background. Let's give a little background to Al, because actually that's important. What happened was I was in a conversation with a publisher about some projects, and authors sometimes think that agents were constantly calling publishers saying, what do you need, as though a publisher is sitting there and they've got all these slots to fill. Oh, and these two are blank. Oh, I don't have a YA dystopian novel. Oh, quick, Sarah, get me the YA dystopian novel hotline kind of thing. And this is not how it works. Usually they're responding to things that come in. They contract the books that look interesting to them. I was in a conversation with a publisher, and I happen to, I like history. I like church history. You mentioned the fact that I did a postdoc, it was actually in medieval church history. And I was talking with them about some things. And in the course of the conversation, the publisher said, boy, that would be great if we could have something about, which talked about maybe some of the interesting people, or in publishing. Bing! And I went, what about an idea, and I pitched the book. I mean, at this point, it was nothing more than an idea in my head, but I pitched the book, and they liked the idea, and I was like, oh, I've got just the guy, and then I went home, and it's like, Al, I've got an idea for you,
My side of the story is, because I've done mostly fiction, I read the idea, which was, I think as you presented, it was 21 church people everyone should know, or 21 the most important church people. I don't remember the working proposal title when we were just discussing it. And my first thought was, all right, technically my bachelor's, which is biblical studies, is a type of history, but I'm not a historian. I don't write history. And then I read the idea, and I thought, this is good stuff. And then, so I bid. I said, okay, I'll do it. If you can sell it, I'll do it. And that led to another book after that one, 30 Events.
Yeah.
And that came out of left field. But to me, that's one thing that a great agent does, is thinks outside the box and says, this is something that this particular client can do and would do. So, yeah, good stuff there.
Excellent. Go ahead, Pops.
Well, yeah, Aaron, you're asking about what an agent does not do. We've talked about what an agent does, but there are a lot of people, as Chip has said, they come with.
Let me mention. I know I'm interrupting. Let me mention one thing, just because it will speak to a little bit of the why question of why I work with an agent, and that is, there's certainly a movement right now saying, well, nobody needs an agent because you're just going to write it, hire your own editor, hire your own cover person, art director. Then you're going to float out and you're going to upload it to Amazon and you're going to sell copies that way. So you don't need an agent. To which I would say, yep. If that's what you're going to do, you may not need an agent, at least for that part of it. I tend to be a skeptic on, as you know, Al, I'm very supportive of the authors who I represent self-publishing. I'm not one who sees it as being, dangerous or anything. I think it needs to be part of an overall plan, and I think it's great that authors self-publish.
Good answer.
Yeah, I just think that there's a broader world than that, and I do not buy into the argument of all you got to do is post your book on Amazon, and the publishing fairy will come down and sprinkle you with golden coins, which generally doesn't happen. If there's anything that the people who are really big on that side don't want to talk about, it's average number of copies sold. And again, I'm not being critical because I'm very supportive of indie publishing. And the fact is, some people, they just want to be published. I do think that sometimes, well, Al and Aaron, we've been at conferences before. Some people want to be published. I think so that they can take their book, and they can place it on the counter so that when friends come over, they can say, "Oh, put your coffee cup right here. Oh wait, let me move my book."
It's starting to hit a little too close to home here.
Yeah, for like artistic purposes or anything like that. But I would argue that even with somebody who's indie publishing, there are some things to consider, and that is if you are looking for distribution into stores, you're going to at some point have to partner with some kind of traditional publisher. And the reason is because stores won't order print-on-demand copies because it can't be returned, right? So certainly to get the distribution of working with a traditional publisher, you're probably going to need an agent. To sell any kind of foreign rights, which I represent a couple of authors who make more on foreign rights than they do, frankly, on U.S. rights, and that is really tough to do, frankly, as an author without an agent. And a third is to sell most sub-rights. We do a lot of films. We just did a 3-film deal with the Hallmark Channel. We did a book which got turned into the Foxcatcher movie, which last year got 4 Oscar nominations and won one of the major awards at the Cannes Film Festival. We've got a film with one of the books that's at Cannes this year. And film rights and other kind of sub rights. We're working. Molly, you're doing a cookbook. We're working with a cookbook author now, who is creating some. It's called merch, some products. He's actually working with a company to create aprons. He's a chef on the Food Channel, and knives and a really cool knife holder, kind of knife case. And that's the kind of thing that it's really tough to do without an agent. So there are some things. In other words, I do think that it's possible for an agent to bring value. From my perspective, the best value I bring is still career management. It's still career development, more than getting you an apron deal.
Well, you could get me an apron deal. I wouldn't complain.
Can you get
Al,
Aaron?
it's funny you say that because Al is always asking me for an apron deal, and I don't.
That doesn't surprise me.
What did I do?
Well, while we're talking about wearing things, Dave Fessenden wants to know if you're wearing your kilt tonight, Chip.
No, I'm not. But I'm not about to show you. So.
Good answer. So,
all right, Chip, let me ask you this.
Dave has a fetish for my legs, apparently. And,
let me ask you this for our listeners here. Hey, I know you're inundated with stuff. Every agent is just inundated with emails and over-the-transom submissions and things like that. What makes you stop scanning a proposal and start reading?
Okay, let me offer 2 thoughts here. First of all, we're not as inundated as we used to be, but that's because I changed the wording on the website. And I've had my own company now for 10 years and worked at Alive, for all those years before. And so, I used to be, I used to get inundated. It's true. We would have, it was not unusual for us to get, 100 to 200 new proposals a week. And, the simple solution for me was I changed the wording on the website where it said, I don't think you really need to send this to us. And then I changed it again where it said, please don't send anything unless you've talked with us. And then I changed it again to now it just says, go away, we don't like you. And that's worked fairly effectively for me. The problem for me, of course, is I could get hundreds of things just cold submissions, just in over the transom. The fact is, it's so rare that any of those turn into anything. People will say, was it 1 in 100? No, it's not even close to 1 in 100. And so, most of the people who I represent, of course, are friends of other people who I represent. I meet some good writers, and good writers hang out with other good writers, and they'll say, hey, you should meet this guy, and that's how it happens. And so, and we've seen, we can tell great stories about terrible proposals we've seen. But you asked, what catches the eye? And to me, there are a handful of things. I'm a words guy, and I'm a words guy from way back. And so I love a great opening sentence. As a matter of fact, I love a great opening paragraph. I love to be pulled into it just like that. Then, depending on the genre, like every once in a while somebody will tell me, oh, this is a thriller. And I'll be like, really? Because I'm 8 pages into it, and I've not experienced a thrill yet. So clearly there's some issues going on with this one. So this is one of those that, I'm drawn to the writing. Sometimes I'll be drawn to the story. Somebody will give me a short synopsis which will really draw me in, because, good grief, Celtic people, we love a great story. That's one thing about Scottish-Irish immigrants. My grandparents immigrated over, and we are storytellers and people who like stories and wordplay and everything like that. So I will say to authors, to novelists especially, when you're thinking of approaching somebody, think of being able to tell your story in 4 different ways, and each one is a bit longer. You got the manuscript, which is the full story and everything. Then you're going to have a synopsis, which usually runs 2 to 4 pages. Synopses used to be, Al, you remember a synopsis used to be like 40 pages and everything, and then it occurred to people in publishing, hey, nobody reads this stuff. And so consequently, synopses started getting shorter. I know lots of editors who won't read a synopsis more than a couple of pages. They just jump right to the writing. But then, and we get that from most people. There's going to be a few pages of synopsis, and there's going to be a manuscript. But here's what they miss. I want to have a hook, which is just one sentence which pulls me into the story. Because I can use that. If you give me a great hook, I can use that when I'm on the phone or at a conference, or I'm in New York, or I'm in Nashville. I'm talking to an editor, and I just throw out that one sentence. Boom. And if it's a great hook, it'll hook them in. And then we'll see if they're interested in that. And then the other thing is I like some kind of a short description, because I'll use that. And when I say short description, I'm talking about 7 to 12 sentences, a couple of paragraphs at most. Look, in 7 to 12 sentences, you can't give the entire story. You can't name all the characters. You can't give me every plot twist. But you can give me a flyover. You can give me something which it just kind of takes us over the story, and here's what happens, And those 2 things are often missing in proposals, but those are 2 things that will help sell it. Because if I have a hook that's really strong, I'm interested right away. If I've got if I've got some kind of a short description of the story, see, that's interesting to me, because that gets me moving forward on it, because I get to see where the story's going. So, does that help at all? Does that answer your question, Aaron?
Yeah, it does. And I'm really excited that you say you're really looking for a hook and a good, strong first line. And I think what our listeners really need to hear is that everyone should have a copy of my first in fiction book, where I teach them how to write a great first line, so that they can get an editor, or an agent rather. I was doing so well.
They could get an editor too.
They could get an editor too, but yeah, shameless self-promotion on my part.
As long as we're all shilling our products, they could also pick up a copy of my book, Pitches and Proposals.
That would probably be better. Yeah.
And I,
You know
I
what?
suggest, if you're serious about pitching ideas, that you get that book. I've read the book, and it's worth getting.
Hey, and if you order before midnight tonight, we'll also include
Ginsu knives.
New apron.
Yeah. See, we don't need to argue, Chip. They can get both. They can get both. Let's just, there's no reason to arm wrestle over
no,
this.
that's true.
Mainly because I lose.
When they get right with Jesus, they'll mine. But that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, is there anything then that you see? You mentioned just all these submissions that you get, and some you put on your website. Please don't send these. I'm curious, what were those? What are the things that you didn't like reading? The things that immediately you just kind of put the project down? Any sort of traps that writers commonly walk into?
Sure. It's funny. People will. When Noah Lukeman, who is an agent, when he came out with his book, The First 5 Pages, which is a fabulous craft book for novelists, by the way, when he came out with that, I was at conferences where people would be like, oh, 5 pages, that's not enough. And the agents, of course, are all looking at each other because we're like, most of us decide if we're going to read on in the first page or two. I mean, most of us know pretty quickly. Because, look, if they can't, if the writing at the start, which is what you would think as a writer, they'd spend a lot of time, really polishing and getting the right words and the right sentences and the right image and everything like that. And if this is all bad at the start, I can do it. It ain't getting better. I mean, that's one of the myths that, if you'd only read the whole thing, the fact is, you as the agent, you only read the first 50 pages, but it gets really good, starting. And I'm like, where? At page 88? And you're waiting for the reader to get there? Really? I mean, unless you're going to, show up at everybody's house and kind of walk them through the boring part, that's probably not going to work. There are some things you can look for. I like to tell people, the worst opening line I ever saw in a novel came to me years ago. It's probably 20 years ago now. It was when I was first agenting. And the opening line of their novel was this: "Ring, ring," said the telephone.
Wow.
That was all I needed to
laughing.
read. I would be honest. I read one sentence of that because it was, barf, barf, said the agent.
But the telephone was such a poignant character.
Yes.
It was symbolism.
Yeah, exactly. I missed the symbolism there. But there are certain things, for example, first-person novels where, and I love first-person novels, and first-person obviously has become much more in vogue than it used to be over the last 5-6 years. But boy, there is nothing more boring than you open up the first page of a novel, I woke up, I looked around, I put my shirt on, I walked into the bathroom, I shaved, I looked out the window, I saw, it's like, oh, I did this, I did that, I did this other thing. This is boring. This is boring. So that's a classic thing a classic mistake we see, I verb, with beginning writers with first-person novels. Yeah. I can go on. I know I'm talking too much. So go ahead, Aaron. Go to the next one.
I'm thinking about. I was contacted once because I used to help people write proposals. Just give them some advice, for my teaching at conferences and stuff. And somebody sent me this proposal, and they said, "Al, I've given this to 6 publishers, and it's all been rejected, and I don't know why." And so I said, "I'll take a look at it." And in the first paragraph, he said, "I don't read fiction much, and everything I've read is bad, so I want to show you how it's done." And so I had to write it back, and I said, "So this isn't moving, huh? This isn't getting any interest at all when you start by insulting the people who probably put out the books that you just said weren't worth reading, and that you didn't read it all anyway." And at that point, I had to say that you have to redo the whole thing, and you've already burned those other bridges. So good luck with this. So sometimes people don't think things through, but that's really the key here in getting an agent, getting a publisher, is you have to put yourself in their shoes. What is it they're going through? How do you make it easy for them? How do you get to the point? And then with agents, and you correct me if I'm wrong about this, Chip, but it's part of the author's job in doing a proposal is to equip the agent to do his or her job. That is, give them what they need so that they can become that salesperson or come back to you and say, okay, listen, I think you're close, but here's what we need to do. Can I spin it this way? And then go from there.
Yeah, I used to say to people at conferences when I was doing a lot of conferences, you need to work at this so that you think through all the objections and answer them ahead of time. In other words, don't give them a reason to say no, because really at every publishing house there's a pub board, and the pub board is the decision-making body at a publishing house, and it consists of the publisher, the head of editorial, the head of marketing, the head of sales. There'll be the editor who's bringing the project in. There's somebody from the accounting, the mean counter side. There's somebody from production to talk about this is what it's going to be like, and then there's usually somebody from publicity who is a high school grad, and they go get everybody Starbucks, and they'll discuss the idea there, and there is this sense of they're the decision-making body, and I think a lot of times people feel they're the ones who choose the books. But, it's funny. That's not really true. The editors have gone out, met with agents, met with authors, talked to people. They're the ones choosing the ones that are coming into that group. At a lot of actually, probably at most houses, the pub board, a big part of their job is just saying no. No. These are the things that we're not going to publish. And so trying to think through how do we get to yes? What do we say? What can we do to move everybody? There's no objection to this. The fact is they're going to like it. And sometimes, let's face it, everybody loves a good story and everybody loves good writing. But I mean, all of us here on this panel, we all know really great writers that are not getting published because, look, it's a tough market. Art, making a living at art is hard. All of us who go to church know wonderful singers because you'll sit in church long enough, and if you spend your life sitting in church, you'll come across some terrible singers, but you'll come across some great singers, people who are really, really talented, and you're always wondering, now why didn't they become a big star? Well, it happens. If you're into painting, or you're into music. My son played guitar in a band, in a garage band up in Seattle, and it's really good. But the difference, but it's tough to sort of break out and be seen. And what's really tough is to say to people, here's my record or my CD or my MP3 file or something, and would you pay me $20 for it? I mean, that's what's tough. It's selling art. It's the same with painting. It's the same with anything that's like that. And so, so sometimes it is. There's a dumb luck feature to this. Molly's resorted to drinking. She's drinking heavily here, so that's the sign that I'm going not too long with my answers. So.
Wow.
Once she gets to the end of that bottle, she'll be singing probably Irish drinking or something.
Okay, all right. Well,
well, we blame Molly for everything anyway, too. So
it's a true story.
That's actually on her business card. It says producer of the podcast and scapegoat. So it was nice for her to put that on there. But yeah. I am curious. We are kind of running a little bit. We are running a little bit short on time, and there was one question that I wanted to get to, so I'm going to selfishly go ahead and jump to the question that I added here, and that is, I think we've got a lot of writers who listen that are not agented, and I think one of their biggest questions is, should I be looking for an agent, or more appropriately, when should I be looking for an agent? How do I know that I'm ready? What's that query process look like? So what would you say to our listeners who are perhaps getting ready?
I think
for
that's
that
a very
step?
fair question. Yeah, that's a very fair question to ask, Aaron, because now here's what I'll find, first of all, and this won't encourage people terribly, but I see way too many writers who insist that they need an agent and they're not ready for it. And the reason is because their work's not ready. And it's like I look at it, it's like the work is like 40% done. What is an agent going to do for you? An agent is going to tell you, well, go finish this, or go make this ready. Or, you know what, you've been working on this one for 2 years, you've tried to make it better, maybe it just isn't working, go write something else. What the average novelist in this industry is publishing either their 6th or their 7th novel that's complete. Not that they've started, but so many people, it's like, oh, I've written my first novel. I got news for it. Most first novels are terrible. Not all, but most. And so it's one of those where oftentimes they need to go write some more and everything. So I would say that maybe everybody thinks they need an agent. They may not quite be ready. However, they probably are ready when they've got something to sell which is saleable. They've got a manuscript. Manuscript's going to have to be done if they're writing fiction, and I assume you want to be talking about writing fiction in this discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, the manuscript's going to have to be done, and the reason is because there's no publisher who's going to be buying your debut novel based on sample chapters. So it's going to have to be done, and it's going to have to really be polished and everything like that. I always like it if an author has some sense of where this fits, and the reason is because, if you've written a Western, well, because this happens to me, people will come in and they will say, "Oh, I really want you to take this to Tor. I really want the people at Tor Forge to see this." And I'm like, well, it's a Western. They don't do Westerns. And then the author's like, yeah, I know, that's why I want you to take it to them, because this will be a whole new thing for them. Yeah, that's not how the business works. I'm sorry. Publishers publish in lines, and so it's one of those, I always like talking to an author who has some familiarity with the business, but again, what they're going to do is, if they know kind of who they are and what they need, I think there's a bunch of questions that you can ask. The best place to meet an agent these days is going to be at a conference or hanging out at Molly's house when she's having a party. But a conference is a good spot because there'll be a bunch of agents there, probably representing a variety of genres and everything.
See,
and
that's
if you go to my website sometime. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
I'm saying, yeah, I could host a party like that, have all the important people at my house.
If you go to my website sometime, which is just my name, chipmcgregor.com, it's a blog. Chip McGregor, McGregor has an A in it. If you go to my blog, which I think, 5 or 6 times has been named by Writer's Digest as one of the 101 best writing sites for writers. All that happens on the blog, chipmcgregor.com, is writers send in questions, and I answer them, or some of the other agents who work with me answer them. And that's what we try and do. We try and just talk to people about the questions that they have. Several times I have made lists of questions on there that I think are valid to help you figure out what you need and if this agent may be a good fit for you. So just some quick, so you can find it on my blog, but some quick sample ones. Hey, who do you represent? Any agent who represents people, they should be able to tell you. Hey, what genres do you represent? They should be able to tell you. Hey, could you tell me what are some of the houses you've done deals with? Because look, if somebody says to you, oh yeah, I've done deals with Harlequin and Silhouette and Elora's Cave and Avon Romance in Kensington, and you're writing like a serial killer thriller, you probably have to ask yourself, okay, is this the agent for me? Because those are all romance lines. So maybe they just sell romance. So some questions like, and I always think it's fair to ask them, what houses have you done deals with? Who are some of the editors who you've done deals with? How many deals have you done? How long have you been doing this? And I'm not opposed to newbies, by the way. We all start somewhere. But it's nice to know sometime if somebody has some experience that they bring to bear. And I think that's why it's a fair question to ask, so how'd you get into the industry? And I'll say that because there's a trade organization of literary agents. It's called the AAR, the Association of Author Representatives. And it's basically there to serve as a watchdog organization over agents. Now, there's other places that do that. Writer Beware does that, and Predators and Editors does that. Not every agent belongs to AAR. I'm a long-standing member and everything, and proud to be a member of AAR. Not everybody does, but the fact is, just trying to figure out what experience somebody has, because anybody these days can call themselves an agent. See, and that's one of the things that people miss out on. So there, just as there is a variety of quality in craft in writers, I would argue there's a variety of quality in craft in agents, which is sort of my polite way of saying I know some really crappy agents, and you can edit that out later if you need to, Al. But
oh, it's alive.
I do like, when you go back to re-record this and make me look younger, then you can edit that part out. It's true. There isn't anything magical about somebody calling themselves an agent any more than it's magical about them, some writer going on and saying, I'm the queen of romance. Okay, I mean that's a cool slogan. I don't know what it means, and so that's one of the. So I do think, asking an agent, could you tell me what are some of the books? What are some of the titles that you've represented that you're really proud of? Or show me the covers of what you think are some good titles and some good covers that you've represented. What do you like to represent? What do you like to read? What would you say is your strength as an agent? What do you bring to the table? In other words, the notion of it's not like a writer coming in, to the great agent, sort of bowing, to the great and powerful Oz and going, "Oh, please read my manuscript." Look, this is going to be a business arrangement, so it needs to be a conversation where we're basically interviewing each other, and the writer needs to feel free to ask some questions politely, but to ask some questions and to get some answers. I think. Does that help?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
I think
It does. It does, absolutely.
It helps a great deal, because there are so many misconceptions about what agents do. And you're right, there can be some bad agents. What's the old line, the old axiom that's out there that having no agent is better than having a bad agent?
Oh, yeah, there's no question. I've seen bad agents screw up writing careers.
Yeah.
In my perspective, you're better off not having an agent if you're going to have somebody who's
I have taught for years that the agent is supposed to help manage your career, but your job as a writer is to help manage the agent. You have to keep track, see if the agent's doing their job, if they're having a problem, or they misunderstood something you said. You have to stay involved. You can't just send this off. I can't send everything off to Chip and say, "Okay, I'm done with it. Let me know how it all turns out." It's not going to be that way. There may be give and take. There may be questions on contracts or things I need to do with that. So I have to keep track of them. And I don't mean just monitor them to see if they're being good boys and girls. What I'm talking about is you have to know what they're doing so you can know what you need to do. So you keep track of those. Well, we got to throw this back to Aaron because we're almost out of time. Did I answer
your question adequately?
Yeah, you did. You absolutely did. And I love all the points that you guys are making. And Pops, you make a good point about being in contact with your editor. I just got a phone call from my editor today. More shameless self-promotion coming. He wanted to congratulate me on being a finalist for the SELA Award. Hand of Ad and I is a finalist for the SELA Award. So pretty excited about that. Just heard about that today. So hooray. And
congratulations.
Thank you very much. So Molly told me I had to mention it. So she's my publicist.
Yes, I did.
So I listened to her.
Occasionally.
But we are out of time. Yes. We are out of time. Chip, thanks so much for coming on. It's been awesome having you. And if you're not opposed, maybe we'll see if we can work you in again some other time. But really glad to have you along. So next week,
I want to talk to my agent.
Well, I'll talk to you. Yeah, I think I know a guy who knows you. So I'll talk to the agent's agent. Wouldn't that be a great job? So next week we're going to be taking a look at the changing world of publishing, which will be a lot of fun. Don't forget you can send in your Ask the Author questions via Facebook or Twitter or email, old-fashioned email if you want to do that. You can find us at altongansky.com, franklymydearmojo.com, aarongansky.com, and mcgregorliterary.com, or just Chip McGregor, correct? Just chipmcgregor.com works as well? Excellent. So I just went there, so I'm going to have to spend some time taking a look at that. And it's been awesome, Chip, having you on. So we thank you all for listening, and until next week, good writing.